and welcome to Ed's Garage. So for our first project of this channel, we're going to be working on my car that I've had for a very long time and never intended it to get to the position that it's in right now. I originally started this project just doing a little rust remediation. I didn't think it was that bad. And of course, with rust, the more you look, the more you find. So eventually I ended up stripping the whole car down. It's really nothing but a shell right now. And I'm working on getting rid of all the rust in the car so that I have a good base to actually start working on the car with, because the last thing you want to do is put everything you want in the car, whatever high performance mods you want to make, however much horsepower you want to throw into it, and then have a chassis that just can't handle that kind of power. Originally, this car only had 150 horsepower. With my tired engine that I just pulled out of the car, it was probably making more like 125 to 130 horsepower. Still deciding if that engine is going to go back into the car rebuilt, which I could probably get 180 to 200 horsepower out of it without getting too crazy. But it's pretty expensive even to go there. So I might end up doing an engine swap, probably going to be an RB. If I go that route, which kind of leaning towards that. But before I can do anything else, I need to get the chassis in shape and I need to remediate all of the rust, which unfortunately there is quite a bit of. Now, while I was going through the chassis and spotting all the rust and getting myself to the point where it got to this spot, I also noticed there was a previous repair done on the vehicle. Looks like the driver's side was hit pretty bad. And instead of welding in the upper frame of the car, they bolted it to the car, which is weird. I don't know why you would do that. So there's a whole lot of bolts holding the upper frame of the driver's side. Probably won't be able to pick it up on camera, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 right here on this side. There's another 4 up there, so that's 12. And then if you go on the inside, there's like another 8 or so. So there's almost 20 bolts holding this section of the frame rail to the firewall. And then where they attached the frame on the top, they didn't weld it, they brazed it for some reason. And then on the lower radiator support, looks like they stick welded it. So that's gotta get all redone. I've never welded before, so this is going to be definitely a learning curve for me. I have done a couple little test panels just to get myself going, figure it out what it is. I'm going to tell you right now, welding is not that hard to do. What it is hard to do is do it right. There is definitely almost an artistic skill set you need in order to do really nice welding. I mean, I did a lot of YouTube videos before I even attempted to try to lay my first bead down. And on the thicker gauge stuff, which I had to basically, in order to attach the car to the rotisserie, I had to basically make my own mounts. And on thicker gauge stuff, you know what? It's really not that hard. You can be pretty aggressive with it, and it comes out okay, especially as a first timer. On the thinner gauge sheet metal, that is where the skill level really needs to increase. It is very difficult to actually weld thin gauge sheet metal without burning through. And you really gotta practice. That's really all it is. Practice, practice, practice. Take your time, figure it out. How I ended up doing the welding myself was I got a couple of bids years ago, which is how the car ended up sitting for a long time, just because I didn't want to drive the car with a little bit of rust that I thought was on it at the time. So to replace the floor pans and do 1 rocker panel and 2 small holes in the fender, I was getting bids from anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 just for that little bit of rust remediation and welding. And it was more like, yeah, we'll get to it when we get to it. So nobody would give me like, yeah, I'll have it back to you in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It was just like, yeah, just park it here, and whenever we get around to it, we'll do it for you. So it didn't seem like anybody in this area really wanted to work on a classic car. So the car just ended up sitting. Plus, I didn't feel like spending $3,000 to $5,000 on getting a little bit of rust repaired. That said, now, with the pandemic going on And I was starting getting bored, so I said, hey, let me just start playing around with the car. And yeah, boom, it's cars in pieces now. But so I bought myself a small welder. Well, yeah, bought myself a decent sized welder. It's got an Eastwood MP140i. Didn't want to spend a whole lot of money, so it's a fairly inexpensive welder, and it does okay from what I can tell so far. If you're a pro welder, this is not the welder for you. It is definitely light duty, but it's good enough for what I got to do. It wasn't that expensive. I should be able to get everything done that has to get done to the car with this welder without too much effort. It might just take me just a little bit longer than if I had a professional welder. But then again, I'm not a professional, so hey, this will work out for me. Now, once I get everything fixed on the bottom of the car, then I'll be able to do the stuff that I actually have some of the skill set for, which is, mechanical stuff. I'm an okay mechanic. I used to be a professional mechanic way long time ago. I don't do that anymore as a profession, but I still remember most of the stuff, and I think I'm pretty handy, so I should be able to get this done. The longest part of this is, for me, I think, is going to be doing the welding. So far, not really enjoying doing it, but you got to start somewhere, and you need a good base. So I'm going to show you what the car looked like beforehand, and then we'll get down to doing all the nitty-gritty stuff and getting the chassis ready for us to do some work. I'm going to try not to bore anybody with my lack of welding skills, and I might do some fast frame stuff for showing me actually doing some welding, but that's not going to be the primary focus. If you want to learn how to weld, this is not going to be for you. There are a ton of really awesome guys on YouTube and other channels that just do welding phenomenally, and where I watched a lot. Don't ask me who they were. I don't really remember. I watched so many different videos. I can't keep track of all of them, but there's quite a few on there. Just put in there how to weld. I'm going to be using a MIG welder. The welder I have can do TIG apparently, and it can also do stick, which I definitely won't be doing. But I might want to learn how to do a little TIG welding too. There are some sections on here which might be better off doing a TIG too, but more than likely I'm going to be sticking to MIG welding. So the first thing we're going to try to repair is some holes that were made into the firewall for an aftermarket air conditioning system that was put into the vehicle. So I've got two holes right here on the firewall, which they curve into the firewall, so that's going to be fun for me to figure out how to do. And then somebody just poked a hole over here for a drain, which I hammered back flat, but there's a bit of a hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a piece of copper behind the hole, and then I'm just going to fill it in with some weld. Hopefully that works out okay. And then for the top part, I'm going to just lightly tack it in around the flat section, and then I'll hammer it down flat and then finish tacking it in. And then once it's tacked in and it looks good, I'll fill in the rest of the weld and then grind it down so that it's flush, and it'll look like the hole was never there, hopefully. So here goes. Here's the piece of copper. It's just, all I did was take a 3/4 inch copper pipe, split it down the middle, flattened it down, and that should be good enough. There's one there. It's always a good idea to make some kind of a template out of paper. I use basically just a folder. It's pretty thick paper. It holds its shape pretty well. This way I could have an accurate size to put on, and then I was able to cut my piece of fill to put in there. And picked up these little magnets off of Eastwood. They come in pretty handy. When I cut the pieces of metal to fill in these holes, I cut them ever so slightly undersized so that the fill material from the welder will be able to get in between the two. I don't want too big of a gap, so there's probably maybe just a little hair over 1/16 of an inch of a gap going all the way around, and hopefully I'm able to maintain that while I'm welding. Not too overly confident that I'll be able to maintain that all the way around, but hopefully with enough grinding that'll compensate for my lack of welding skills. So let's, I've got the welder set up, got my ground point over here, and let's put a couple welds down and see what happens. I just turned down the voltage a little bit because I was burning through. It ain't pretty. I'll grind that down and we'll see just what I did. Okay, that's not going well. Let's try this again. So after adjusting the grounding point, I was able to get a decent weld around the holes. It still could use some work. I just bought one of those handheld belt grinders, which will help me smooth it off a little nicer because the grinder that I have right now is a little too aggressive. And then when we come down here to the small hole that was here, I was having a whole lot of issues because the metal was quite a bit thinner than I was expecting. So I ended up burning through quite a bit. So it's really not pretty at all, but it'll get the job done. Once I get the handheld belt grinder, I'll make it smoother, and then I'll probably end up filling it with some fiberglass filler to help keep it from rusting out, and then I'll paint it and undercoat it so that it looks like it's not there. So that's going to do it for tonight's episode. Hopefully somebody was able to pick something up from what I did. There's a whole lot of other work to do other than those little quick minor repairs that I did. And honestly, I did those first just so I kind of get myself a feel for welding a little better. It's, like I said before, welding is definitely a skill set that requires lots and lots of practice. And even with this entire project, I probably still won't have enough practice to be able to consider myself a decent welder. So the best I'm going to do is just get the welding done, get everything solidly put into the vehicle, and then
whatever mistakes I make, whatever things look a little ugly, because there's definitely a couple ugly spots, maybe I can, fill it in with some filler, and then make it hide and like it was never there. So since the majority of the welding I'm doing is under the car, and let's face it, who the hell's going to be under my car? Nobody besides me. So aside from those two little repairs, obviously I have the major repair, which is going to be doing the floorboards. Then I'm going to be going backwards to the footwell area over here. Then I'm going to start doing the frame over here, and then put the gusset in, and then install the rest of the frame rail that goes to the back of the vehicle. So that's going to be on this side. Once I finish this part of the vehicle, then I'll be comfortable working on the top section, which has basically the frame bolted to the car. And one of the reasons why I'm doing the passenger side first is because I'm not really 100% sure on just how the structural integrity of the driver's side of the car. So and since the car's on a rotisserie and there's a whole lot of pressures being put onto the vehicle, I want to make sure I get this part nice and solid first. Then I could start working on the top section or the driver's side section of the vehicle, and hopefully the car won't really move around or twist on me. Because when you're doing any kind of high performance application of the vehicle, you want to make sure the frame is straight. And if it's not straight, it's going to end up causing a whole lot of other problems in the future. So hopefully everybody has been watching this, has learned something, or at least is interested in what's going on. That said, I really only have about 1 day a week or so that I can actually dedicate to working on my Datsun. So if you like what you're watching so far, please hit the subscribe button so that you can actually see when I post something new. I can't guarantee anything more than every 2 weeks or so. I just don't know how much content I'll be able to post during the process of me doing the welding. So since, like I said before, I'm not really a good welder, I'm barely a novice, the focus is not going to be me doing on welding. I'll show some shots of me doing some stuff and do some explanations of why I did what, but this is not about welding, far from it. So I want to get through this part so I can get to the part that I actually enjoy, and I think the part that most people want to watch, which is what you do to enhance the performance of a vehicle. So please hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, hit the like button if you like what you're watching so far as well, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.